Welcome to the Wandering Pilgrims podcast. Thanks for joining us again today. If you missed us last week, that's because we took a week off. Happy Reformation Day to everybody for last week. I'm a bit of a nerd, I'm sorry. If you don't know that by now, I'm pretty sure you're clued in after that statement. But yeah, Reformation Day was October 31st, the anniversary of Luther nailing the 95 Theses to the door in Germany. So, beginning the Protestant Reformation. And there is your history lesson for this episode. But yeah, we're back this week. And we are, spoiler alert, here we go, I'm remembering. If you haven't read Pilgrims Progress, which is the book that we are covering right now and discussing in depth, highly recommend that you do. We wouldn't even be considered the Cliff Notes for this book. There's just so much to it. There are links in the bio and description for you to check out of different versions of the book, be it audio or print or modern English, old English kids versions, lots and lots of different versions. Highly recommend that you read it and then come back and check us out. Or if you'd like to read along as we go through it, that would work great too. But, and I mean, you can always listen to us and then go read it for yourself. But definitely think you will get so much more out of it than we could ever provide in this podcast. Pretty sure I know what people are getting for Christmas. Not gonna lie. Little recap, I guess. So, as I said, we're covering Pilgrim's Progress, as y'all probably figured from the title. Written by John Bunyan in the 1600s in England while he was in prison for preaching illegally. It is one of the best-selling books, much less Christian books of all time. Such a wonderful tool for people at any stage of their journey, but especially if you're just starting out or refreshing your faith or coming back to it, because it's such a great, almost roadmap to help you dig into the Word, or at least for us, that's how we consider it. And to help keep you on the straight and narrow path past the wicket gate. Last episode, we left Christian and hopeful after they had met the flatterer and the shining ones or celestial ones, depending on the version that you have. If you'd like to check that out, that would have been Pilgrim's Progress episode 9. But since we covered that so thoroughly, I don't figure we need to go into too much detail here. So, are you ready to discuss this?
Yes.
Alrighty then.
This episode of the Wandering Pilgrims podcast is sponsored by Anchor, the easiest and fastest way to record, edit, and distribute your podcast. We love Anchor and the Anchor app. We've used it from the very beginning. It's so user-friendly, whether you're a beginner or a veteran. It's free to use with tons of editing tools and free music to use, just to name a few things. They also take care of distributing your podcast to all major podcasting platforms like Spotify, Apple, Google, and so many more. So if you're looking to get into podcasting but don't know where to start, download the Anchor app or visit anchor.fm to get started today.
So, I guess we should pick up first with... So they were back on the path after their encounter with the flatterer.
Mm-hmm.
And they walked along for a little ways. I don't really remember a whole lot of dialogue between the flatterer and the chastising and getting back on the path before they see another person coming. And he's walking the opposite direction on the path.
Mm-hmm.
So he kind of stands out from all of the others that they've met because of that fact.
Yes.
They didn't meet him off on a side road or come upon them, mm-hmm. or another person come upon them and try to join their party. This person is the only one I remember, except for the ones that run when they're scared or something, who was like leisurely walking a normal road path, just in the opposite direction of the celestial city. Anybody want to guess what his name was? This man's name was Atheist. And it says in the book that he was walking with his back to Zion. So they meet him along the way. And, of course, you know, they get to talking about, where are you going? What are you doing on this path? And they tell him. And he laughs at them. Because he believes there's no such place. And I think Christian said something about there is in the world to come, or something along those lines.
Yeah,
in the book.
Atheist says that he's traveled this road many times, and he's never seen a place like they're describing, or that this place does not exist that you're looking for. And in his mind, he's thinking of it as a physical
here and now
place that you're going.
Yeah.
And Christian tells him, no, of course it doesn't exist here. This is a place that exists beyond.
Yeah.
Like in the next world.
Yeah.
The world to come is where this place exists.
When he had looked for it, or he told him he'd looked for it for like 20 years and never found it. So he just thought it was a joke, basically, at this point. So he decided to go back to the world and be worldly. Yeah.
He believed in it so far as it was a physical place that he could prove factually
scientifically because that's kind of how I look at it, because you can't find the celestial city without faith. And if you're just looking at it from an academic or educational standpoint, you're not going to find it.
No.
If you don't believe that if you don't have faith in the Creator and the Savior, then it's just a place and a story to you, a mythology. It'd be like you going and looking for Mount Olympus.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't believe Mount Olympus was real. I believe that it was maybe based on a mountain, but I don't think Zeus hung out there.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like so Mount Olympus is a real place, except the top of it is not real.
That's what I mean. Yeah. Like based on a real mountain.
You just walk up there and you go,
but not based on a real mountain. Like
there's no Greek gods up here, and just walk down.
Yeah, but to the Greeks, you just weren't privy to it because you were human.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, real mountain, but at the same time, not a real mountain.
Yeah.
But coming from our perspective, we read those stories now. We go looking for the gods on top of it. We wouldn't find anything. We don't have faith in their religion. The question then becomes, could they have found it when they believed in it? And to my knowledge, no one ever did.
Not that I've ever heard.
Not first-hand accounts, stories of heroes and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I never really understood those stories. Well, I mean, I understood the stories, but when it comes to mythology, and because what we consider mythology today was another person's religion at another time. And now, you know, a lot of people lump Christianity in with mythology.
Yeah.
That's their answer, the scientific answer. It's all mythology. It's just everybody's way of trying to explain the world. The difference to me is that it's so different from all the others. You're talking the most widely known mainstream mythologies here, Greek, Roman types. They're and even some others. They're fickle.
Yeah.
They're so human-like, and yet they're somehow set apart.
Yeah.
Like, why? Who decided to set them apart? Why are they different? You know, like, it always raised more questions for me. And then when you read the Word, no, he's pretty consistent. He may get mad. Mad's an understatement. But you understand why.
Yeah.
It's not this time I punished this sin, but another time it's no big deal.
Yeah, he's not just playing games like Greek gods did, where they just destroyed this city because they felt like it, and destroyed this person and their family because they had a bad day. There's purpose behind everything that God does. Absolutely everything that he does has a purpose.
And then you add Christ on top of it.
Exactly.
And that story is just so, well, I say story, but I'm using my mythology literature lingo here, and I shouldn't be. But
The biggest difference that I've been able to in study between all of the old religions is the fact that the Hebrew people came along, and the Hebrew God, the creation story specifically, is set apart from any other creation story.
Ironically, there's elements of it, though.
There are elements of it.
As well as other elements.
But you have stories where the world was created because two gods fought. Yeah. And one used limbs from the loser to create the sky and the ground, the earth. And there's all this violence in the creation of the world. Yeah. Except for when the Hebrew God comes in his creation story,
he speaks it into existence.
He speaks it into it. Yeah.
I mean,
he spake, and it was.
Spoke.
Spake.
Okay.
Spake. Yeah.
I mean, just when you compare those stories, I keep saying that word because I'm thinking of books and I shouldn't be. But when you compare them and just take a step back and look at what all of these other, what we consider mythologies, old religions believed about creation, for instance. And they were all rather violent or crazy, how they say it came to be. Yeah. But powerful. I mean, massive, powerful beings. And then you have the one that is so powerful that all he has to do is speak.
That's it. Yep.
It just sets him apart so much. Yeah. Yeah. And to me, that sets it apart from the concept man could create. Because the other ones, to me, violence can create, and it all of those seem so human-esque, I guess, in how they're constructed. Very easy to comprehend and very easy to understand. The only thing that you're ever told that you can't understand is why one of those old religion gods does what he does. Can't understand what they do. Well, I can, actually. I just don't like or understand his reasoning. Yeah. Because I get that he was jealous of such and such. He took care of the problem. Yeah. Because he was jealous. Okay. Yeah, I get that. I get why that story, why he did that. So but that's human.
Yeah. The other big difference now, and part and parcel is because most of those old religions don't exist anymore. Yeah. We have Islam, and we have
Hinduism.
Buddhism.
Buddhism's more of a not religion as much as moral
Christianity,
code.
Judaism, right? Yeah. So when all of these other religions existed, everyone believed in everyone else's gods. So far as, in fact, that they existed.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Well, I mean, Paul even told
like,
people not to let their guard down between idols and gods.
Yeah. Yeah, he makes
The
a
difference.
specific distinction between what idols are. Those are things of wood.
Yeah.
I don't care about those things because they're not real.
Yeah.
And then going to the temple or going to a temple for another god and eating the sacrifice. Like, don't do that.
Yeah.
Because you don't know whether or not
that is an idol.
That you're putting yourself in a position to be bothered by something that's actually real.
Yeah.
So...
Isn't that in the section where he talks about principalities?
Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah. So, in the Hebrew people have... There's a way that this is explained, right, in Judaism. And I'm probably grossly misquoting here and paraphrasing. The idea is that all of these other beings are real. They're real. But the word is Elohim. So these are all spiritual beings, right? And at some point, when humans fell, so did these other spiritual beings.
They're the fallen.
Yeah. And they become lord over cities, right?
Isn't that discussed in the Bible about the fall? Well,
So,
not necessarily the fall,
yeah.
but that there are beings that are... God just says that he chooses his people and
Yes.
you can reign for so long.
And you can go, all you other humans can go
do whatever.
Do whatever you want, and you can be under the rule of these other Elohim. And so these other humans do. And even like in the story of Daniel, when Daniel is in Babylon,
Yeah.
he prays to God.
Yeah.
And it's several days before an angel comes to see him.
Yeah.
And speak with him. And I think the angel is Gabriel. I think.
He shows up the most.
But he shows up and he's like, sorry it took so long. We had to fight the principality over Babylon so that we could come and speak with you. So him and several other angels have been fighting this other spiritual being so that they can come and speak with Daniel while he's in Babylon. And the idea is that these other spiritual beings control the people that live in their cities.
Yeah.
To keep them where they want to keep them from God. And it's the same concept.
Well, it also keeps them in power.
Yeah. It's the same concept as the city of destruction. So Abaddon.
Yeah.
And
or Apollyon.
They are the principalities over the city of destruction. It's a very old idea that's in the story for a reason, but it's not allegory. It's supported biblically that these spiritual beings lord over these cities.
Well, we've had this discussion. I don't know if we've had this discussion on the podcast or not yet, but
yeah.
I know we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
But yeah, I that was a rabbit hole. But I brought all that up because now we don't have the old religions and old gods, so to speak.
We have a different one.
We have new gods. Self being one of the biggest. Technology, materialism, things like that. Politics even. And then even some versions of Christianity have been warped.
Yeah.
Because once Christianity came onto the scene, then the question becomes, okay, if you're the enemy here, how do we attack that? It's come now.
Yeah.
Now what? Before, we were just old god, we set up as other gods. We led people astray to worship us. Now, the floodgates are opened for them to take away our worshipers.
Yeah.
So what do we do with them? Well, we infiltrate. I mean, time and time again throughout human history, it's proven so effective. Spies and infiltration. False information.
Yep.
And it doesn't have to be false by much.
No, just little tweaks
Yeah.
to very important parts. Yeah.
So, and even science and different things like that can be raised up now to be, I want to say false gods. I guess that's the best way to put it at this point. Because it's not the same, or I don't equate them the same as idols, because an idol to me is an altar and a statue thing. That's how I have, I guess, a biblical mindset of an idol. But I always grew up with people saying, be careful what your idol is. And I think that's a hard concept now.
Yeah.
Because people didn't grow up with having somebody who believed in Zeus down the street and had an altar like that. And like, people don't grow up with that. They don't understand it when you say idol.
Yeah.
And to me, when you tell somebody, look, your technology is your God, they've grown up with the idea of God. In the Western world, you have grown up with some idea of a God and a higher being, whether or not you prescribe to it or not.
Yeah.
So phrasing it that way, whether or not I'm getting the definitions right, I don't know. But to me, that is your God if it supersedes God.
Yeah, well, it's certainly idolatry, the idea that you have this little wooden figure that lives in your home that you feed.
That's how I think of that.
You leave it food offerings, and you light candles for it, and you talk to it, and you're feeding this thing. So yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I mean, if you walked up to somebody that maybe was new to Christ or didn't really know a whole lot about it and said, and they have a grasp of history, idols in history. Your phone is your idol. Your money is your idol. They may look at you if they have a grasp of history and go, I haven't put food out for my phone ever.
Yeah.
But if you look at them and say, your phone is your God, it rules your life. It is what you worship every single day. It just, I don't know. I don't know if it matters. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the terminology to me makes such an impact nowadays because we've taken the word idol and the concept of it now is different than it was. But that was a long way around to get to my point about atheist. Because he doesn't even believe in any of that.
No, no.
He doesn't believe in anything. It's not like if anything, his God is scientific, his own wisdom. His own wisdom, that's the best way to put it. His own wisdom is what he has faith in. And that's it. And so he finds Christian and hopeful hilarious. But the bad part about their discussion is as he's presenting all of his information and all of his facts and findings, Christian wavers. So Christian, who's been on this journey longer than anybody else we've had in this book, wavers at the facts, quote unquote, and information presented and laid out eloquently, maybe scientifically we could put, I don't know how best to put it, but the dude's findings make him waver. He didn't find it. Maybe he's right. Hopeful told him his opinion.
Yeah.
And Hopeful's like, I'm pretty sure this dude is one of the flatterers. And I think that's an interesting thought. Because
Yeah.
typically, most of the time when we've met a character in this story, it's just one character. And we met the flatterer.
Mm-hmm.
The flatterer.
Yeah.
But here we have another one who's given the title, again, as a flatterer.
Mm-hmm.
So the question then is what do we take from it? He speaks nicely and
Mm-hmm.
has eloquent presentation, has enough information to make you.
Yeah.
So then, can I make a leap and say that talkative is a flatterer?
You could, yeah.
Because that's just how I'm piecing this together. If it's a title, not just one character, and trying to look at what they have in common.
Yeah.
That's what I see. Someone that can speak well, that has enough information to make it seem like they know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
They know how to talk to people convincingly.
Mm-hmm.
They all seem to flow together.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Hopeful had to remind him of all of the stuff that they had seen with their faith.
Mm-hmm.
Not just with their eyes and that they could touch with their hands. What they had seen happen because of their faith. So, I really liked that part personally. Because it's always a step. It's something that I've done.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think that, and I think it's in the Bible. I'll have to look it up. I can't remember. But I believe somebody said something about you should be questioning yourself to help keep yourself in check.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody is going to go through life or go through their journey of faith and not once ever question.
Mm-hmm.
There are plenty of people in the Bible who questioned God himself.
Yeah.
So
Job, most
yeah,
notably.
Job is what I was thinking.
Directly questions God.
We watched a video about him today, so that's probably why he's in my mind.
The trouble with Job is that God answered.
Yeah. Well, he shouldn't have told him to come down and see him face to face. But I would say that advice to anybody that is ever going through a point where they're struggling.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, pray and open your Bible.
Yeah.
Those are your first defenses. The third, after the Bible and your prayer.
Mm-hmm.
I would say whether it's write it down or just think on it or whatever. That's why I like writing things down for prayer at different points. Because then you can look back and say, wow, he answered that.
Mm-hmm.
That's wonderful. Or he answered that, but not exactly the way I was thinking he would.
Yeah.
It gives you perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had, because I'm a writer, I can't help it. I love lists and notes and everything else. So I write things down. But a lot of people are good at just recollecting and recalling things. If you have that wavering moment, try to think of the things that you've prayed about and that you know have been answered in your bones.
Mm-hmm.
If you do write down your prayers and stuff, flip through it. Because I always go back. That's my thing. When I'm doing that and writing down people that I'm praying for or a situation or something that I'm praying for, on the day that I know it's answered, I will put a praise in there.
Mm-hmm.
But on the day that I know it's answered, I go back through my book, either with a pen or with a highlighter, and highlight their name.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was answered. And I want it to stand out boldly when I'm looking through it.
Mm-hmm.
To know that, hey, this was answered. And it took this long from the time I knew about it to the time that, like, it helps me see and remind myself of it, I guess. But so Christian and Hopeful talked for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But atheists, I mean, Do you remember them saying anything else particularly? Does anything else stand out to you in their discussion?
So Hopeful says, hey, like, be careful. Like, he may be another flatterer.
Yeah.
And you know what happened the last time.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to get whipped again.
For real.
Let's not talk to this man. You know, and then he helps to reaffirm Christians' faith.
Yeah.
That
it's kind of what
it is
Hopeful
there.
did.
He's like, don't you remember when we were standing with the shepherds? We saw it. Well, we didn't exactly see the gate, but we saw the light from it, from where they were. Like, we know it's there. We already know that it's there. Don't listen to this guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
That's kind of been Hopeful's thing the whole time, though.
Mm-hmm.
You need hope.
Yeah.
Can't make it without it.
Mm-hmm. So he helps to reaffirm Christians' hope. And Christian answers the man with the fact that it's not of this world. It's of the next.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
So, the only other note that I had about atheist was that he was blinded by the God of this world.
Mm-hmm.
And that he went away laughing at them.
Yeah.
Thinking they were crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I never could understand that.
There's a difference between people whose religion is science, so they just think you're a fool.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people who I'm sure you've met who are atheists, but aren't really.
Those tend to be angry.
They despise the idea of being accountable to someone else.
I will say this, though.
They despise the idea of God because that then means whatever has happened to them in their life is they're accountable for.
Yeah, they made decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, not everything falls under that.
They don't want to be held accountable.
Yeah. Well, everybody will be. So
Mm-hmm.
you better get to practicing now.
Yeah.
To be honest, those kinds of people are one of the reasons that when the verse that kind of prompted all of this and got the ball rolling on the podcast and everything, they were a group in my mind of always be ready and able to explain the hope that you have.
Mm-hmm.
And when I've had that discussion with other people, because the other group to me is to be ready and able to explain the hope that I have, is to other people that that claim the mantle of Christianity but seem to be stuck at the gate.
Mm-hmm.
So I need to be able to explain the hope that I have and the way that I am to them.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, that is my armor for the atheists that are that angry.
Yeah.
And I say that because most atheists that are that way are more informed than most Christians on Christianity and what Christians believe. And they are very, very good at picking apart the broad stroke religion. You want to talk about making a Christian waver. These are those two groups that I described that kind of prompted all of this.
Yeah.
Are the ones that tear each other apart.
Mm-hmm.
And unless the faith gets past the wicket gate in larger numbers, it's just going to continue that way.
Yeah.
And right now, people that can pick apart a person's faith, make them leave it.
Mm-hmm.
And we've gotten to a point where they can be superficial about what they pick apart.
Yeah.
They're not even picking apart like doctrine.
Yeah, it's just little things.
Yeah. They pick apart at the hypocrisies and things that have to do with organized religion or have to do with church or have to do with a life or how you're living. Or, like, they know enough of that to pick apart your faith. Yeah. And if that makes you waver, then you got some work to do on your own. Mm-hmm. Because an atheist should not best you in your faith.
Yeah.
That should not be happening. And it does. And I actually watched a video, and it was a guy who, it was a Q&A. Mm-hmm. And the guy that came up to the microphone, I don't know what he was going to say or what he was going to ask because I didn't even get to that part of the video. But he said, he led with he was an atheist, and the guy on stage was a Christian. Mm-hmm. And he said, can I stop you right there because I have to ask you a question? And he asked him why he was an atheist, and he just, it was kind of some shrug-off answer of, I really just don't believe in some higher being or whatever. Mm-hmm. And the guy on stage had a very good response, I thought. And he goes, I'm a Christian, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember word for word, I marvel at people like you that are atheists because I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Mm-hmm. And he goes, well, what do you mean? Well, you believe that everything in this world came from absolutely nothing, that we can't definitively prove any of it, but that we're basing everything that we believe, that you believe, that has nothing to do with a higher power or creator, on theories. Mm-hmm. You have faith in theories. Mm-hmm. And he's like, whereas I have faith that a being created things in an orderly fashion. Mm-hmm. And gave things purpose. He's like, I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Yeah. And I'm like, that really is a great answer and response because it is a religion.
Yeah.
It's an anti-religion religion.
It is. It is. This idea that everything that you see came from nothing. It just happened. For no reason. But for some reason, accidentally, it all came to order
perfectly for humans to exist.
For the world to be, for this one particular planet, out of all of them, to be able to sustain life. And intelligent life at that. Mm-hmm.
We're not talking microbes or bacteria.
No one made that happen. It just kind of happened.
Maybe.
By accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of it is, the majority of it is explained by theory. Mm-hmm. Which is an idea.
I would love to go into the Big Bang on one episode theory compared to creation. Yeah, because I've always had a weird way of looking at things like that. And then the age and things like I'm way too analytical and research driven.
Yeah.
So I have all of these different theories and information and stuff rattling around on in my head any given time.
Yeah. But what I find ironic is the fact that scientists today, and a lot of scientists throughout history, they will defend it as ravishly as a religious person will defend their faith.
Mm-hmm. It's because it's what they believe. Mm-hmm. You can't prove it.
It's their religion. Mm-hmm. That has more questions.
It's a theory. I mean, it's a theory. You can try to prove it.
It's a religion in which there are more questions unanswered.
Yeah, God gives us a lot of answers.
Than any other religion.
Yeah.
Why does the universe exist? I don't know. There's a couple of theories.
It went bang.
Why does the universe exist? Because God spoke it into existence.
Mm-hmm.
He brought order to the chaos.
Mm-hmm. I know. We could talk about creation and universe and stuff all day.
But you can listen to scientists nowadays talk about things, and they talk about it, a lot of them talk about it with faith.
Yes.
As if it is a religion.
Mm-hmm.
Even to the point of discounting factual evidence so that they can go on believing what they want to believe.
Yeah.
Most notably, and you can do your own research on this, is this idea of Clovis first, which is
the people,
the first humans in America.
Yeah.
They're called the Clovis first people. There's been several digs in the United States that have dug deeper than Clovis period, and they have found things, which is evidence that people were here before the Clovis people,
and living in the same area.
And living in the same area. But all of that's been discounted, and it's not recognized.
You're talking, what, 10,000 years ago was Clovis?
Further than that.
Was Clovis.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, yeah.
Human beings have been here for a really long time. And they just swept it under the rug because it didn't support
their
modern scientific theory. They would have to change the scientific theory.
Well, you see that going on.
And that's not convenient.
You see that going on now. We do that with history in schools.
Mm-hmm.
Inconvenient history is swept under the rug.
Yeah.
I've heard some people say that they don't want to teach history past a certain point or before a certain point for American history because they either want to avoid slavery or they just want to start with the civil rights or they just... And I'm like, the thing about history, if you're going to learn from it, you got to take the good with the bad.
Yeah.
Because you don't learn what was bad and why they needed the good if you don't have both parts.
Yeah.
So they're doing that with history now. They're trying to, some school districts are trying to make, they've claimed that math is oppressive, so now they're going to change how they teach math. I mean, I'm not making this up. Don't ask.
Seriously?
I don't know. Yes. Yeah.
Well, it's the same idea as we're not going to teach about socialism in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Because the evidence shows that socialism throughout the 20th century
fails miserably.
And
kills millions of people.
Yeah. So we're not going to teach kids that. So that they won't know that socialism is that bad.
They aren't taught accountability either.
No.
And to be honest, our generation wasn't really taught accountability either.
No.
Not largely. And now our generation is the one with children. Mm-hmm. So can we really be surprised? It's going to take our generation, more than likely, or the generation right after, to try to fix and correct this problem.
Well, I was at work, and statistically, Gen Z is more conservative than the greatest generation.
Yeah.
Our grandparents.
Yeah, and that's a crazy number.
Yeah. So
they get to vote next election, do they not?
Yeah. So we're having a group discussion at work, and we're trying to discuss frustrations, right? To field these questions that we normally are too busy to field.
Yeah.
So that we can answer them for each other. And this kid says that he's frustrated that he's glad that everyone tries to help him along. It irritates him that no one holds him accountable for his mistakes.
Can I applaud him?
I did. I did. It's okay. And he's right. It's okay to make mistakes.
That's how you learn.
You're going to. Exactly. Yeah. But if someone doesn't hold you accountable for those mistakes and say, hey, this is the mistake, and this is how you can fix it, you're never going to learn.
No.
You're going to walk around ignorant
of
the fact that you don't know what you're doing, and you're never going to grow. You're never going to learn from it. Which,
considering ignorance shows up a bunch in these next couple episodes, good point for right now, for sure.
And, like, it just was the coolest thing. Because you don't see a lot of people
I'm hoping we see more.
Want to be held accountable.
I'm hoping we see more.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know Gen Z is supposed to be different than the millennials, but to be honest, there's not a whole lot of age difference between the two. It's more of a mindset. It's the tail end of a generation and the beginning of a generation. And typically, the values and things that are important, they like to skip generations, or they seem to repeat themselves every other generation or so.
Mm-hmm. Well, the other thing is that this is also, millennials we're the ones who grew up with computers and grew up with social media. We saw the beginning of social media. Yeah, we started
all of it.
And then ruined it.
Yeah.
And Gen Zers, if that's what you call
right, yeah.
They've grown up with it.
Yeah.
They've grown up with social media.
They weren't learning it as we learned it as it came out. They had it from the beginning.
Yeah. So they've already figured out, oh, well, this is just the thing.
Mm-hmm.
This is not something that I need to spend 20 hours a week playing Farmville, like I'm sure quite a few millennials have done, or have my nose in Facebook all day because it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. They don't care.
No,
it's
they
a
don't.
thing that they've always had, just like us and TV. TV came along with our parents and our grandparents and was this huge thing. And to us, it's normal. It's a normal. It's a normal thing. You watch it like an hour or two a day.
Is it bad that I don't even have shows anymore?
Yeah, I know,
Like
right?
I've almost given up TV at this point.
We do have shows. They're just educational.
Yeah, I know, right? I know. That's all we watch pretty much. If it's not a cartoon, it's an educational show. Because there's nothing on TV that interests me at all. If I watch a show, and we had that discussion a couple years ago when we stopped watching so much, because everything we were watching that we were trying so hard to be invested in and care about, all they did was make us anxious and feel awful.
Yeah.
After watching it, and I'm like, well, that's not healthy.
Yeah.
It wasn't, and we felt better when we stopped, which is amazing. Which really goes to show what you put in, you get out.
Yeah.
But we've had several rabbit holes with atheists,
Oh, for sure.
But he covers a lot.
I've got one more.
Okay.
Just real fast. I'm going to make this short. What I find hilarious is that, with our grandparents, their big thing, the breakthrough technology for our grandparents was the radio. And the ability to hear people speak and talk, and even like radio shows.
Affordable cars were kind of a big deal too.
Yes. But this idea that you could hear someone, you could live in Georgia and hear, you live in rural Georgia and hear someone in Atlanta talking.
Well, and
like
to be
right
honest,
then,
depending on when they were born,
over broadcast.
the telephone, depending on when they were born, the telephone was still a novelty as they were growing up.
Yeah. And still even, like, you're getting news faster and all of this stuff, and the changes that made. And then with our parents, you had television. And that was big. And then with us, you have the internet. Computers, the internet, social media.
Smartphones.
And what if we come all the way back around to?
Podcasts.
And
radio.
Radio. That's exactly what this is radio. It's talk radio. The difference is that it's on a little tiny computer you keep in your pocket.
And there's a lot more options.
There's a lot more options, and you can listen to it anytime you want. You don't have to sit down at 7:30 for the broadcast.
That's nice.
It is.
I like that feature.
Is. But it's this idea that people would... It's just like reading, right? Versus watching a movie. The imagery that you create in your mind is way better than anything anyone could ever make in a movie.
Yeah, considering we were just watching Lord of the Rings the other night, and I'm sitting there going, wow, every time I watch this, Lothlorien is such a letdown after reading the books. I mean, it's pretty in the movie and all, but man, it's such a letdown compared to just what you conjure up in your mind when you read it. And I saw the movie before I read the book, so I can't say that. But still, like, man, it just leaves so much. You just can't.
Yeah.
You just can't. There's some things you can't do. But, yeah, we've had a lot of rabbit holes with atheists here.
Yeah.
So, I guess we're done with the rabbit holes for now. Like, I hope. Anyway. So they made it on the next stop was the Enchanted Lands.
Yes.
They make you sleepy, drowsy and whatnot. And basically they were warned about this by the shepherds.
Yeah.
And basically if you went to sleep there, you weren't ever getting up. And I had this thought when we were going through this. So if you put your faith to bed, so to speak, you lay it down.
Yeah.
You don't grow it. You don't work on it. You don't do anything to keep it active. You may very well never pick it up again.
Yeah.
So if you're not reading, if you're not praying, if you're not learning, if you're not showing actionable love to others, if you're not actively trying to live your faith and do the things that your faith needs, it's asleep.
Yeah.
And, I mean, there's several references biblically of people being asleep. They're asleep to the faith. They're asleep to the religion. They're asleep to the salvation. So I thought that was a very interesting analogy. But they did a good job about remembering what the shepherd said. And I guess two are better than one in some instances, because then you have accountability, like what you were just talking about. So they talk to each other to stay awake. And as they're talking, they start talking about Hopeful's, I guess I'll call it testimony, because I don't really know what else. I mean, his journey, his way to the faith, I guess, but testimony seems to fit pretty well.
Yeah.
So he tells Christian, I used to do all of the stuff at Vanity Fair. I liked drinking and swearing and lying. I didn't do anything about the Sabbath. He even said that he liked rioting, which I'm like, well, that one's interesting. But all of this was, of course, in Vanity Fair. And then Christian and Faithful show up in Vanity Fair and kind of turn his world upside down.
Yeah.
When they didn't, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it. When they when they showed their faith by smiling and taking it, basically, by taking their punishment that they didn't deserve. It convicted him. And he strove against it.
Yeah.
He said, I fought this feeling so hard. He didn't know that it was God at that point. And he made a point of saying that he enjoyed the world and he enjoyed sinning. And he didn't know how to get away from like his old life and his old friends, but it didn't really matter by the end because he was so convicted and his heart was so burdened.
Yeah.
That he knew he needed to find a way out. And I think that's a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that it's spelled out that way in the book.
Mm-hmm.
That, that he led a sinful life. And he didn't know he was really leading a sinful life. And then he comes face to face with salvation and the faith. And he starts feeling bad about his life and doesn't really know why.
Mm-hmm.
How many people feel bad about their life? They enjoy what they're doing while they're doing it, but then they feel bad about it after.
Mm-hmm.
Most people just chalk that up to guilt.
Yeah.
Self-loathing.
Mm-hmm.
What if it's not? What if it's literally conviction?
Mm-hmm.
And that it's God trying to get you to stir something up in yourself and get you to find Him.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'd never really... I mean, you hear the stories of conversion like that. But I'd never really thought of it in that manner of being convicted about your sin. Because most people, you're supposed to feel bad when you sin.
Mm-hmm.
They don't teach that a lot anymore.
Yeah.
So if they don't teach it a lot, when you feel bad about sinning, and you don't know why you feel bad, it's just, you're guilty.
Yeah.
You feel guilty. Okay, why do you feel guilty? That's the question. And it's a question that we don't ask.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not taught to ask ourselves. So maybe we need to start asking that question more often.
Mm-hmm.
If we feel bad about something that we did, we're lucky enough if we're Christians to kind of have an idea of why. But we got to get better about asking ourselves why when we feel guilty and feel bad about acting or doing any particular thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same difference of when you go and you get really, really drunk and party it up and have a super awesome fun time. And then the next morning, you feel like...
Poop.
You feel absolutely terrible because you have a massive hangover because you drank so much the night before that you started puking before you passed out. And now you wake up with a headache because you're dehydrated.
Puke in the floor.
And you feel like you have the flu. You feel terrible. And you're like... oh my goodness, I'm never going to do this again. And then you work all week, and to reward yourself, you do it all over again.
Mm-hmm.
It's an exaggerated example. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You're doing something that's not good for you. It's not healthy for you, either physically or spiritually. And yet you continue to do it.
Mm-hmm.
You feel bad after you've done it, and yet you continue to do it.
Until you find a way out, hopefully. So I found that very interesting because he made the point of saying, I enjoyed it. Basically, I enjoyed it while I was doing it. Mm-hmm. But then afterward, I was convicted by it. And then that he made the point of saying, I didn't really want to leave the friends that I had.
Yeah.
I liked the crowd that I was running with.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And most of the time in the back of their minds, if you have any Christian leanings, you have that friend that kind of says some stuff in a particular way or acts in a particular way, and you kind of sit there and grin, or you don't really participate or have anything to contribute, but you got this feeling when they're doing it that you know it's wrong. You know them being that way is wrong, or at least wrong for you. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, you know it. You know it's bad. You know it's wrong, but you don't want to leave them. Yeah. You don't want to leave that situation. That doesn't mean you can't try to bring them around to yours. Mm-hmm. But that's very hard to do when you're first starting out, which he was. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to convince somebody of a faith that you barely know and understand yourself.
Yeah.
So I really liked that they laid this out as plainly as he did in this book. But he eventually, basically, Hopeful was convicted of his sin all the time. It got to the point where it was everything. He'd get it to go away for a little bit, and then it would come back. And especially if he met like people that were doing good, or people were reading the Bible around him. If his neighbors were sick, he became terrified of like death and judgment and all that conviction. It was just running through his mind and his life constantly at that point, ever since Christian and Faithful.
He even makes a point of saying that before, had they come along before they did, he probably would have laughed in Faithful's face like everyone else did.
Yeah.
But he had been on the edge for struggling with it. And then by the time that they got there, it just pushed him over the edge.
God's timing. Yeah. So, as he was dealing with all of these things, he started to try to fix his life on his own.
Yeah.
He stopped being sinful. He stopped hanging out with those people. He'd read the Bible. He'd pray. He started, talking to others about what he'd learned. And I love this part. He starts doing these things. And those things made him think that he was fixed for a while. But he still found himself wanting.
Yeah.
He was lacking still. After all that, he was doing the works.
Yeah.
Basically. You were doing everything that you should to look like a Christian. But he didn't have the faith aspect.
Yeah.
And I think he said, didn't he quote all our righteousness is as filthy rags, basically, and that you can't be saved by works, not by works alone. And then he got to the point where he's like, and I still sinned. I was trying so hard not to sin, and I still sinned. And Faithful, at that point, spoke with Hopeful. I don't exactly remember how they got to talking, because Faithful was a prisoner at that point. But Faithful spoke to Hopeful and told him that to obtain righteousness is from Christ alone.
Yeah.
You can't do it yourself. And that you're justified by Christ alone because of his sacrifice for you. He saved you. He has saved you already. You have to realize it and believe in what he's done for you. And have faith that he will continue to save you and guide you along the path, basically. And then Faithful gave Hopeful a book and told him to go ask for forgiveness. What exactly did he say? Ask for God's mercy and to make him know of Jesus Christ. Magnify thy grace in the saving of my soul through Jesus Christ. God didn't reveal it to Hopeful after he prayed it like 6 times?
Yeah.
Because he kept praying it. He'd pray it once and he wouldn't, I think he was waiting on an epiphany. It's kind of how I get the imagery in my head. He was waiting on an epiphany. I just imagine him sitting there praying the first time, and then after he's done, he just cracks one eye. Like, is there going to be some magical burning bush in the corner or some kind of sign or something? Mm-hmm. But he kept at it. Mm-hmm. And he thought about stopping. He did. He wavered. But then, eventually, God revealed Christ to Hopeful. He was very sad one day because of his sins. And he said that he saw Christ looking at him from heaven, saying, "Believe on the Lord Jesus Christ and you will be saved." Mm-hmm. And he looked back and he said, "But I'm such a sinner. I'm a great sinner." And Christ just looked at him and goes, "My grace is sufficient for you." And Hopeful, of course, has all his questions, you know. But what is believing? Which, let's be honest, how many people have asked that question? What is believing?
Yeah.
"And he that comes to me will never hunger or thirst." That believing and coming was all one thing. Mm-hmm. So you have to find Christ to believe in Christ. Mm-hmm. And then he ran out. I'm sorry, I'm misquoting. I'm trying to remember. He that ran out in his heart after Christ, mm-hmm. he indeed believed in Christ. And he keeps questioning, like, there's this big back and forth between him and Christ, which you don't really get in the book, but right here. Mm-hmm. And he's like, again, he like reiterates, "But I'm really a really bad sinner. Like, can I really be saved? Like, you told me that 2 questions ago, but can I really be saved? He that comes to me, I will not cast out." You know. Mm-hmm. And Christ came to save sinners. And he's the end of the law. He died and rose again for sins. And we have justification through Christ. Mm-hmm. He's the mediator for us. Yeah. And at that point, Hopeful was just overjoyed. And he realized the world was in the state of condemnation that Christian had realized way back when he started his journey. Mm-hmm. And he started to be ashamed of his old life and his ignorance in the past. Mm-hmm. And he began to love a holy life. And he wanted to share what he had learned and work for God's glory. Mm-hmm. And that's basically when he started his journey to catch up with Christian. Mm. So, I mean, we get all of that information with Hopeful's testimony. And there's just, I love the simplicity of it. I love the back and forth in his vision with Christ. Because I think a lot of people have those questions. Yeah. They don't really know how to ask them, or they're afraid to ask them. Then the question is, who do you ask? Yeah. Do you ask, if you ask the wrong person, then what? Because sometimes, you'll get a cookie cutter answer to some questions. Oh, yeah. And they don't help you in your journey and getting anywhere. So I love that this is laid out in this book this way. Mm-hmm. Because it gives you a clear picture of this for somebody regardless of where they are on their journey. Mm-hmm. Because there's plenty of people that question or could ask this who've been in their journey for 30 years. Mm-hmm. You have a flatterer come along and make your faith waver. Yeah. It doesn't take, it should take a lot, but we're fallen people. Yeah. It doesn't always take a whole lot, mm-hmm. depending on the situation and what somebody's going through, to make them question, do I really believe this? Mm-hmm. Do I really deserve this? Am I worthy of this? And you have all of that laid out here. You have all of it laid out with how he started, from sinner to salvation, beginning to end, and what he did all along the way, mm-hmm. and what the right path was and what the wrong ones were to be a Christian. Yeah. Yeah, I think everybody needs to read this book. I may be biased, but I think everybody needs to read this book.
I agree.
So, do you have anything to add to Hopeful's testimony? Because I kind of just went back and forth with my notes there for a bit.
No, you're fine.
Because it was a good bit of dialogue. One-sided dialogue. But dialogue nonetheless. It's kind of self-explanatory, too, which was nice for a change. Gave my brain a rest. I wasn't looking for as much symbolism.
Well, we're coming up on some.
I know. That will be our next episode. So I guess that's a good place to end this. Because I know we got a pretty heavy hitter coming.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
For the next episode. And that's just, it's got to be the next episode because it's just too much to cover here. So if you like our podcast, please rate it, subscribe, check us out on Facebook and Instagram. We have been doing our quotes as visual quotes on Instagram instead of at the end of the episodes because John Bunyan is just a talented wordsmith and there are too many for me to quote at the end of an episode. So check those out. There's links to those in the bio and description. There are also a bunch of links that I've added to different versions of Pilgrims Progress, whether it be for you, for your child, for a gift, Christmas coming up. There's a lot of great resources and options down there. I actually stumbled upon one this week by RefToons. If you haven't checked them out on Instagram or Facebook, that's RefToons, and they did a illustrated poetic version of Pilgrim's Progress, and it is absolutely fantastic. I bought 2 of them for a gift, actually. And also there is a movie out, there's a link to it in the description as well, of Pilgrim's Progress that is animated that just recently came out that is actually very, very good. Not absolutely sticks to the book completely, but it does a very good job, and it's a very, very good way of introducing people to the book, especially if they're more visual than readers. So check those out. The links, a lot of those in the descriptions, by the way, are Amazon affiliate links. So what that means is if you do any Amazon shopping through those links, you are supporting the channel because Amazon will give us a commission and it will cost you nothing, which we think is pretty fantastic. And it helps us continue this podcast and this work, which we're pretty attached to at this point. But, check out the links in the descriptions. We'd love to hear from you guys on Facebook or Instagram. And we may or may not be working on a YouTube channel. Stay tuned for that. Depends on how techie I can be. The jury's still out on whether or not I can make that happen. But we're going to give it a go to give y'all an extra place to be able to listen to us and to listen to the podcast and share it with others. So please tune in next time. And I guess until then, keep wandering through the Word, pilgrims.